amazing the lengths that the Pretendos will go to try and downplay the Pokemon IP. Earlier this year, they tried to prop up Power World, an irrelevant knockoff product that could have been mistaken for a Chinese plagiarized product. Okay? They seriously tried to meme Power World into relevancy, just like they did with Temtem, just like they've done with so many other Pokemon competitors in the past, right? They tried to gaslight you into thinking Power World was some huge success story and would like destroy the Pokemon IP. Like, oh, it's getting merch. Oh, it's getting a TV show. Oh, it's outselling Pokemon and lawsuit. Ha! Because they plagiarized so much material, right? Again, I saw it coming. Plenty of people who weren't blatant shills saw it coming, but the online gaming community really did rally around this idea that the Nintendo Switch era of Pokemon games are bad. I'm always seeing like YouTube nobodies release statements saying that like, well, Let's Go was bad, Sword and Shield was bad, and of course Scarlet and Violet are the worst games ever made. Like, like they try really hard to make this stick, but it couldn't be more obvious that it's not. Okay, like this is just a repeat of what happened with the Gen 1er thing, where a bunch of people came on in Gen 4 and 5 and are now outgrowing the brand, right? There's nothing wrong with that, but you have to be honest with yourself about why you're losing interest in Pokemon, right? This is a child-friendly brand that isn't aging up with you, and that needs to be understood when talking about the brand and talking about like the decisions Game Freak makes and how all this is structured, because the brand isn't made for you. And that is something that a lot of people really need to understand when in regard to this thing, is that they will not alienate their target demographic to appease some weird Westaboo weirdo. Okay, so with that being said, these people come out every now and again to make some wild statement about Pokemon, some wild claims, and they try and meme them into being some huge deal. Case in point, the recent Pokemon leaks, right? I haven't looked at them. I don't know if they're legit or not, but people are going crazy, like spurging out over some of the things we've seen here. And the thing that really gets to me, the thing that really makes me chuckle, like Knuckles in Sonic 3, the thing that really gets to me is that a lot of people are acting morally outraged that human Pokemon relations is a thing. Okay, something that's been established since Gen 4, something that has like, attached lore to it. This does not come out of nowhere. Okay, it's kind of an established thing, right? And yet everyone's acting shocked and appalled that there's like material related to this in the leak. Like, oh no, they did this with a child-friendly brand. Yeah, Pokemon is dark. Again, that's kind of the point, is that these are real animals. This is a real ecosystem that sometimes does dark things, right? Like, it's not completely out of left field or ridiculous to do something dark with the brand. And again, this goes to what I've been saying about the Pokemon IP, right? Because, like, how many times have you seen people like, oh, it needs to be darker, it needs to be more mature, it needs to be more adult, right? It needs to grow up. And then you see something like this, and the same group of people are, like, freaking out because they think this will get people to stop taking Pokemon seriously. And I do think this is, like, the real reason why these people... there's always some controversy regardless of like what the Pokemon company actually does or what they announce or how good the games are, right? The real reason people are so upset is that they desperately want Pokemon to fail. And all of their narratives kind of revolve around that concept, right? They can't look at Scarlet and Violet and say like, oh, I like what they did with the new Pokemon designs, or I like the new structure, or I like the open world. Like, no, all you ever hear is people like making stuff up about like, oh, get glitches and bugs everywhere, which was not true. It never was true. But you have people faking these these YouTube videos of their games completely crashing and like setting their Nintendo Switches on fire, and yet people like try to take them seriously. They try to present them as a real legit thing and not an obvious farce, right? Again, you can buy a copy of Scarlet and Violet right now and see that it runs perfectly fine. Better than games like Elden Ring. By the way, Scarlet and Violet did outsell Elden Ring. You're supposed to Nobody really evaluates Pokemon games fairly, right? When you really look at what the Pokemon Company is doing and how gamers like react to it, like every single time, there's just some insane, just ridiculous cope from the Pokemon audience, right? I remember when Gen 5 came out, and it was like one of the biggest generations ever. We got like over 150 new Pokemon, this brand new region, all these great additions, wonderful story. It was just like a 10 out of 10 game. But so many people moaned and whined and complained about certain things the game did, specifically like not allowing you to get older Pokemon until the post game. This was like people forget, and I've seen people bring this up. People forget just how much Unova was hated when it first came out. Right? It was a wildly unpopular gen when it first debuted, and it's kind of weird looking back on it now because I think Gen 5 has a reputation for being one of the better gens now, or the best in my opinion. But a lot of people really got it in their heads that Unova dropped the ball and it was the end of Pokemon. Ooh. And of course, like X and Y came out and became a huge system seller in the 3DS, in spite of being a lot worse in a lot of respects, right? X and Y are my least favorite Pokemon games ever. So when you take that into account, like, again, this is a good example of what I mean. That the critical reception and the sales of a product doesn't necessarily reflect the quality. And I do think this needs to be talked about in regards to Pokemon in particular, because these games are technically selling way more than ever, and yet we're supposed to believe that the games are declining in quality and everyone's upset. Like, which is it? Like, again, isn't the truth is somewhere it is not what people are saying it is, right? Like, again, the games clearly have an audience who really like them and buy them, but we're led to believe that these YouTubers like just have this vast network of influence over the Pokemon audience. It isn't true, right? Like, again, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet were very well received by people who actually played them. So I'm not talking about Angry Joe, like complaining about a game he never played, or Felicify doing his like furry thing and pretending he knows something that nobody else has figured out. I'm not talking about the PokeTubers or like the Power World audience stuff. The reality is, people who actually played Scarlet and Violet really, 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 really enjoyed it. Right? One of my favorite gens for sure, and it's appalling to me to see like just how many people are are doing everything they possibly can to try and downplay the success of this franchise and these games. And I really wonder when it's going to end, because it's definitely on the decline. I really don't see this surviving another generation, because after propping up something like Power World, after propping up Temtem, I think it's becoming really obvious that the Pokemon audience is just throwing whatever they can at the wall and hope it sticks. Hoping it takes off or whatever, like hoping it becomes like some controversy. And I think people are getting really sick of it, right? Like I said, it reminds me a lot of the Gen Oneer things, right? The Gen Oneer days when those guys would come on like on message boards and tell us that like, well, everything after the original 150 Pokemon is fan fiction. It's not real. They're not real Pokemon. And they would like do these weird comparison shots between like modern and new Pokemon. Well, at the time, modern Pokemon and the classic ones. It was just like, come on. Come on. You are deluding yourself. That didn't work then, and it's not going to work now. It is going to be really, really interesting seeing the Pokemon brand continue to grow and evolve over the next several generations, because we are going to see this current trend downward, this conspiratorial audience thing, the toxic fan base, it is going to wither away and die because you can't keep complaining about a franchise while still endlessly consuming all of its products, right? Like, again, you're going to reach the point where nobody takes you seriously.